Welcome back to the Haunting Hour, the home where shadows whisper and the unseen lurks in every corner. If this video sends a shiver down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more chilling tales, and ring the bell to never miss an eerie episode. I'm eager to hear from you, so after the video, comment below to tell me which story you like the most and what haunting tales you'd like to hear next. Now, gather your courage because it's time to dive into the first story. Let's see if you can handle the haunting. It all started last October, just as the leaves were turning and the air got that crisp, chilly bite to it. My town, normally boring and uneventful, became the center of something terrifying: the creepy clown sightings. I'm Alex, and this is the story of how I came face to face with one of those clowns. It was a Friday night, and my friends and I had decided to go to the old abandoned park on the outskirts of town. We'd heard rumors that clowns were being spotted there, and we wanted to see if they were true. We were all kind of thrill seekers, and the idea of spotting one of those creepy clowns was both terrifying and exciting. "Are you sure about this, Alex?" my best friend Jordan asked as we walked down the dark, deserted road leading to the park. "Yeah, man, what if we actually see one?" added Lisa, her voice shaking a bit. "Come on, guys, don't be chickens," I replied, trying to sound brave. "It's probably just some kids messing around. Let's check it out, and then we can say we did." The park was pitch dark, except for the dim glow of the moon. The swings creaked eerily in the wind, and the whole place had a spooky vibe. We huddled together, our flashlights barely cutting through the thick darkness. Suddenly, we heard a noise, a soft, high-pitched giggle that sent chills down my spine. "Did you hear that?" Jordan whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Yeah," I said, my heart pounding. "Stay close." We crept forward, our flashlights trembling in our hands. The giggle came again, louder this time, and then we saw it. A figure in the distance, illuminated by the moonlight. It was a clown with a painted white face, red nose, and a creepy, toothy grin. It stood completely still, just staring at us. "Let's get out of here," Lisa whispered urgently. But before we could move, the clown started to walk towards us, its footsteps slow and deliberate. It reached into its pocket and pulled out a red balloon, holding it out towards us. "Hello, kids," the clown said in a sing-song voice. "Are you here for the show?" I felt like my feet were glued to the ground. The clown's voice was so eerie, so unnatural, it made my skin crawl. "We need to leave now," Jordan hissed, grabbing my arm. But I couldn't move. The clown was getting closer, its eyes fixed on me. Then it did something that nearly made me scream. It burst the balloon with a loud pop, and I swear I saw a flash of something sharp in its hand. "Run!" I shouted, finally breaking free from my paralysis. We took off, sprinting towards the park's exit. I could hear the clown laughing behind us, a horrible, manic sound that echoed in my ears. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the park, gasping for breath. "What was that?" Lisa panted, her face pale. "I don't know," I replied, trying to steady my breathing. "But we need to tell someone. The police, our parents, someone." "Who's going to believe us?" Jordan said, shaking his head. "They'll think we're just making it up." "We have to try," I insisted. "That clown wasn't just a prank. It was real, and it was dangerous." The next day, we went to the police station. Officer Miller, a grizzled veteran with a stern face, listened to our story with a frown. "Kids, There have been reports of these clowns all over town, he said. "We're investigating, but so far, we haven't caught anyone." "But we saw one," Lisa exclaimed. "It had a knife or something." Officer Miller nodded. "I believe you. But without more evidence, there's not much we can do. Just stay out of the park, okay?" Feeling frustrated and scared, we left the station. As we walked home, we couldn't shake the feeling that the clown was still out there, watching us. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that creepy grin and heard that sinister laugh. I decided to do some research, hoping to find out more about the clown sightings. I spent hours on my computer, reading news articles and watching videos. The sightings had started a few weeks ago, first in nearby towns and then here. Some people thought it was just a prank, while others believed it was something more sinister. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A video posted by a local kid showed a clown standing outside his house, staring up at his window. The clown waved slowly, then turned and disappeared into the night. The kid's terrified voice narrated the video, saying he had seen the clown several nights in a row. I quickly saved the video and sent the link to Jordan and Lisa. We needed to find out more, and I knew just the person who could help. Mr. Thompson, our high school history teacher, and a bit of a local legend when it came to strange happenings. The next day, we met up with Mr. Thompson in his classroom after school. He listened intently as we told him about our encounter and showed him the video. "This is very troubling," he said, stroking his chin. "Clowns have a long history of being both entertaining and terrifying. But these sightings, they seem to be something more." "What do you mean?" I asked. "There are legends," Mr. Thompson began, "of clowns that aren't human, beings that take the form of clowns to lure children and spread fear. They're drawn to places with dark histories, places where bad things have happened." "The park," Lisa said quietly. "There was that accident years ago." Mr. Thompson nodded. "Exactly. The park has a history of tragedy. If these clowns are connected to that, they could be more dangerous than we realize." "What can we do?" Jordan asked, looking worried. "We need to find out more," Mr. Thompson said. "I have some old books and records that might help. Meet me here tonight and we'll do some digging." That evening, we gathered in Mr. Thompson's classroom, surrounded by dusty books and old maps. We pored over everything, looking for clues. After hours of searching, we found something. A newspaper article from the 1960s about a series of mysterious disappearances in our town. The common thread? Each of the missing people had been last seen at the park. "This can't be a coincidence," I said, my heart pounding. "The clowns must be connected to those disappearances." "But how?" Lisa asked. "And why now?" "I don't know," Mr. Thompson replied. "But we need to be careful. If these clowns are responsible, we're dealing with something very dangerous." Determined to get to the bottom of this, we decided to go back to the park, but this time we would be prepared. We armed ourselves with flashlights, cameras, and anything we could use as a weapon. Mr. Thompson insisted on coming with us, and I was grateful for his presence. As we approached the park, the atmosphere felt even more oppressive than before. The swings creaked in the wind, and the shadows seemed to dance menacingly. We spread out, carefully searching for any signs of the clown. The minutes ticked by, and just as I was starting to think we wouldn't find anything, I heard it again, that high-pitched giggle. "Over here," I whispered, waving the others over. We followed the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, and then we saw it. The clown, standing by the old carousel, holding a balloon. Its grin seemed even wider, more sinister. "What do you want?" Mr. Thompson demanded, stepping forward. The clown tilted its head, its eyes gleaming. "To play," It said in that same sing-song voice. "Come and play with us." "What are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The clown's grin widened. "We are many. We are fear. And we have been here long before you were born." "Leave this town," Mr. Thompson said firmly. "You're not welcome here." The clown laughed, a horrible, chilling sound. "You can't make us leave. We thrive on your fear." Suddenly, the clown lunged at us, moving with terrifying speed. We scattered, shining our flashlights in its face, trying to disorient it. Mr. Thompson swung a heavy book at it, but the clown dodged easily. "We need to get out of here," Lisa screamed. "Not yet," Mr. Thompson shouted. "We need evidence." I pulled out my phone, frantically recording the encounter. The clown seemed to realize what I was doing and turned its attention to me. It moved closer, its eyes locking onto mine. "Come play with us, Alex," it whispered. Just as it reached out to grab me, Jordan tackled it from the side, knocking it off balance. We took the chance to run, sprinting towards the exit with the clown's laughter ringing in our ears. We made it back to town, breathless and terrified. We showed the video to Officer Miller, who watched it with a grim expression. "This is serious," he said. "We'll increase patrols around the park and do everything we can to catch these clowns. But you kids need to stay away from there. It's too dangerous." The town was on high alert for weeks, but the clown sightings gradually decreased. People started to feel safe again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Mr. Thompson continued to research the history of the park, and we helped whenever we could. We learned more about the disappearances and the dark history of the area, but the clowns remained a mystery. One thing was certain. We had faced something truly evil that night. And though we had escaped, I knew deep down that the clowns were still out there, waiting for their next chance to spread fear. As for me, I'll never forget that sinister grin or the chilling laugh that haunts my nightmares. The creepy clown sightings may have faded from the headlines, but in our town, the terror they brought will never be forgotten. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls and the shadows grow long, I swear I can still hear that giggle, echoing through the darkness, reminding me that the clowns are never truly gone. It all started with a dare. They always do, don't they? It was a dark, stormy night, like a scene straight out of a horror movie. My friends and I were gathered at Jake's house, playing video games and trying to outdo each other with scary stories. Then, someone brought up the old school, Crestwood High, the abandoned school on the edge of town. "Bet you wouldn't last a night there," Jake smirked, leaning back on his chair. His eyes glinted with mischief. I rolled my eyes, trying to act tough. "I'm not scared of some old building," I replied. "It's just a bunch of bricks and dust." "Yeah?" Laura chimed in, her eyebrows raised. "Then prove it. Spend the night there, and we'll even throw in $100. I hesitated for a moment, but then pride got the better of me. "Deal," I said, shaking her hand. "When do I start?" The next night, with a flashlight in hand and a backpack filled with snacks and a blanket, I stood in front of Crestwood High. The building loomed over me, its windows broken and its walls covered in graffiti. The wind howled through the empty halls, making the place feel alive. I took a deep breath and pushed the front door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the dark corridors. The smell of mildew and decay hit me instantly. I coughed, waving a hand in front of my face, and stepped inside. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Anyone here?" Of course, there was no answer. The place had been abandoned for years, ever since the accident. Rumor had it that a student had died here, and that's why they shut it down. No one knew exactly what happened, but the story was enough to keep people away. I set up camp in what used to be the library. Dusty bookshelves lined the walls, and the floor was littered with papers and old furniture. I laid out my blanket and sat down, trying to ignore the creepy feeling that I was being watched. Hours passed slowly. I read a comic book by flashlight, trying to keep my mind off the eerie silence. But every now and then, I heard noises, footsteps, whispers. I kept telling myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew it was something more. Around midnight, things got worse. The temperature dropped suddenly, and I could see my breath in the air. My flashlight flickered, and then went out completely. "Great," I muttered, fumbling in the dark for my backup batteries. As I replaced them, I heard a soft giggle. "Who's there?" I demanded, shining the light around. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but empty shelves and dusty floors. Another giggle, closer this time. My heart pounded in my chest as I got to my feet, the flashlight shaking in my hand. "Show yourself!" I yelled, trying to sound brave. And then I saw her. A girl, no older than 14, standing at the edge of the light. She wore a tattered school uniform, her hair hanging in front of her face. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Then, summoning all my courage, I followed her. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls as I chased the ghostly figure. "Wait!" I called out. "Please, I just want to talk." She led me to the gymnasium where the accident supposedly happened. The place was in ruins, the floorboards rotted and the bleachers falling apart. She stood in the center of the room, looking at me with sad eyes. "What happened to you?" I asked, stepping closer. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing in the vast, empty space. Before I could respond, the doors slammed shut behind me. I spun around, shining my flashlight at the exit. But it was too late. I was trapped. The hours crawled by, each one more terrifying than the last. I tried to keep my mind occupied, but the girl's haunting presence was always there, just out of sight. Whenever I thought I could catch a glimpse of her, she'd vanish into thin air, leaving me more disoriented and scared than before. I didn't sleep at all that night. I couldn't. The gymnasium seemed to close in around me, the walls whispering secrets of a time long past. The temperature dropped even further, and I wrapped myself in my blanket, teeth chattering. Around 3 a.m., I heard the sound of footsteps again, but these weren't the light, almost playful steps of the girl. These were heavy, deliberate, and filled with purpose. My heart leaped into my throat, and I quickly turned off my flashlight, plunging myself into darkness. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I held my breath, trying to blend into the shadows. Whoever or whatever it was, I didn't want them to find me. Suddenly, the gymnasium lights flickered to life, and I found myself staring at a man. He was tall, dressed in an old-fashioned janitor's uniform. His eyes were dark, empty voids, and he held a large ring of keys in his hand. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice gravelly and harsh. I was just leaving," I stammered, backing away slowly. "You shouldn't be here," he said, shaking his head. "It's not safe." "I know," I replied, inching towards the door. I just got lost. I'll go now." He watched me for a moment, then nodded. "Go, and don't come back." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the door, yanking it open and sprinting down the hallway. The lights flickered and died again, plunging me back into darkness, but I didn't stop. I ran through the corridors, my footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. As I reached the front door, I heard the girl's voice again. "Wait!" she called, her tone pleading. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle. I turned back, my flashlight revealing her standing at the end of the hallway. "Please," she said. "Help me." Something in her voice made me stop. I took a deep breath and walked back towards her. "What do you need?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Find my diary," she whispered. "It's in the principal's office. Please, you have to read it." Before I could respond, she vanished again, leaving me alone in the dark. I didn't want to go back in there. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to leave, to run away and never look back. But something about the girl's desperation kept me rooted to the spot. I couldn't just leave her here, trapped in this nightmare. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I made my way to the principal's office. The door was locked, but a well-placed kick forced it open. The room was a mess, papers scattered everywhere, the desk overturned. I searched the room, my hands shaking. Finally, I found it. A small leather-bound diary hidden in the bottom drawer of the desk. I opened it, flipping through the pages. The diary belonged to Emily, a student at Crestwood High. The entries were filled with her thoughts, her fears, her hopes. But as I read on, a darker story emerged. She wrote about a teacher who had become obsessed with her, about feeling trapped and helpless. The final entry was the most chilling. She described how the teacher had locked her in the gymnasium, how she had tried to escape but couldn't. Her last words were a plea for help. Tears filled my eyes as I closed the diary. I understood now. The girl wasn't just a ghost. She was a victim, crying out for justice. With the diary in hand, I made my way back to the gymnasium. The janitor was there, waiting for me. "I found it," I said, holding up the diary. "I know what happened to Emily." He nodded, a look of sadness crossing his face. "She needs to be at peace," he said softly. "Read the last entry aloud. Let her know she's not forgotten." I opened the diary to the final page and began to read. My voice echoed through the empty gym, the words hanging in the air like a solemn prayer. As I finished, the room grew colder. I looked up to see Emily standing in the center of the gym, her form shimmering with an otherworldly light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. And then she was gone. The oppressive weight lifted from the room, the air grew warmer, and the lights flickered back to life. The janitor nodded approvingly. "You did good, kid," he said, his form beginning to fade. "Now go. Live your life. And remember, some stories need to be told." I left Crestwood High as the sun began to rise, the first rays of dawn chasing away the lingering shadows. My friends were waiting for me, their faces a mix of worry and relief. "You made it," Jake said, clapping me on the back. "I can't believe you actually did it." "Yeah," I replied, my mind still reeling from the night's events. "Neither can I." As we walked away, I glanced back at the old school. It looked different in the light of day, less menacing, almost peaceful. I knew I'd never forget what happened there. The ghostly girl who just wanted to be remembered. And as I turned my back on Crestwood High for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Some stories need to be told, and now, Emily's had been. The sea was calm that evening as our small fishing boat, the Sea Breeze, drifted lazily under the fading light of the setting sun. My friends, Jack and Emma and I, had decided to spend the weekend on a fishing trip. We needed a break from our busy high school lives, and this seemed like the perfect escape. "Hey, Alex, did you hear that?" Emma's voice cut through the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull. Her eyes were wide, and she looked genuinely spooked. I turned to her, puzzled. "Hear what? All I hear is the water and the gulls." Jack, who was busy untangling a fishing line, paused and glanced up. "Come on, Emma. Don't start with your ghost stories. We're here to relax." But Emma was insistent. "No, seriously, I heard something. Like a faint wailing sound. Maybe it's the wind." I strained my ears, but all I could hear was the usual sounds of the sea. "I don't hear anything," I said, trying to sound confident. "Let's just enjoy the evening." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky turned a deep shade of purple, and the first stars began to twinkle. We set up our fishing rods and waited in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. The quietness of the open sea was both calming and eerie. Suddenly, Jack broke the silence. "Look!" He pointed out towards the darkening sea. "What's that?" I squinted into the distance and saw what looked like a faint glow in the water. At first, I thought it might be another boat, but as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. A ship, bathed in an eerie greenish light, was slowly materializing out of the mist. Emma gasped. Is that a ghost ship?" My heart started to race. I'd heard stories about phantom ships, but I'd never believed them. Yet, here it was, right before our eyes. A vessel that looked like it belonged in a different era. Its sails were tattered, and the hull was covered in barnacles. The ship moved silently, as if it were gliding on air rather than water. Jack's face went pale. "We need to get out of here. Now." But we were frozen, unable to look away from the ghostly apparition. As the ship drew nearer, we could make out figures on the deck. They were transparent, like mist, but their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. The wailing sound Emma had heard earlier grew louder, filling the air with an otherworldly lament. "Who are they?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. Emma's voice trembled. "I've heard stories about the phantom ship. They say it appears out of nowhere and brings bad luck to anyone who sees it. Those who look into the eyes of its crew are doomed." "That's just a legend," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. There must be a logical explanation. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. This was something beyond our understanding, something we couldn't explain away with logic or reason. The ship stopped about 50 yards from our boat, and the figures on the deck turned to face us. One of them, a tall man with a captain's hat and a long flowing coat, stepped forward. He raised his hand and pointed directly at us. "We have to go," Jack said urgently, snapping us out of our trance. He scrambled to start the engine, but it sputtered and died. No, not now." Panic set in as the wailing grew louder, almost deafening. Emma covered her ears, and I could see tears streaming down her face. "Make it stop! Please, make it stop!" I grabbed the oars and started rowing frantically, but it felt like we were moving through molasses. The ghostly ship seemed to draw closer, despite not actually moving. Just when I thought we were doomed, the wailing stopped abruptly. The silence was deafening. I looked up and saw that the phantom ship was beginning to fade, its glow dimming until it was nothing more than a faint outline. And then it was gone, vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. We sat there in stunned silence, the only sound the ragged breaths of my friends. Jack finally managed to start the engine, and we sped away from that spot as fast as we could. That night, we anchored far from where we'd seen the phantom ship. None of us slept much. The image of the ghostly vessel and its eerie crew was burned into our minds. The next morning, we decided to cut our trip short and head back to shore. As we docked, an old fisherman approached us. He took one look at our pale faces and nodded knowingly. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. "Saw what?" Jack replied, though we all knew what he meant. "The phantom ship," the old man said. "It's been haunting these waters for centuries. They say it was once a grand vessel, captained by a man who defied the sea gods. His punishment was to sail the oceans for eternity, never to find peace." I shivered. "Is there any way to break the curse?" The old man shook his head. "No one knows for sure. Some say if you see the ship, you're marked for bad luck. Others believe it's a warning, a reminder of the sea's power." We thanked him and made our way home, each of us lost in our thoughts. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Jack's fishing boat sank in calm waters. Emma fell ill with a mysterious fever, and I began having nightmares about the phantom ship. One evening, as we gathered at my house, I brought up the subject. "Do you think we're cursed?" Jack shrugged. "I don't know, but we can't just ignore it. We need to find out more about that ship." Emma nodded weakly. "Maybe there's a way to undo whatever happened." We decided to visit the local library, hoping to find some clues. After hours of searching through old books and records, we found a dusty, leather-bound journal. It belonged to a sailor who had encountered the phantom ship many years ago. His entries were filled with fear and desperation, describing the same ghostly vessel we had seen. But one passage stood out. They say the curse can be broken if one finds the ship's original logbook and returns it to the sea. The logbook is said to be hidden in a cave on the Isle of Shadows, where the ship first vanished. The Isle of Shadows was a treacherous place, known for its rocky cliffs and dangerous currents. But we were determined to break the curse. We borrowed a sturdier boat and set sail for the island. The journey was perilous, with strong winds and rough seas, but we finally reached the shore. The island was shrouded in mist, and an eerie silence hung in the air. We found the cave mentioned in the journal and ventured inside, our flashlights casting long shadows on the damp walls. Deeper and deeper we went, until we came upon a small, weathered chest. Inside was the logbook, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. "Let's get this over with," Jack said, his voice echoing in the cave. We made our way back to the boat and set sail for the open sea. As we reached the spot where we had first seen the phantom ship, we tossed the logbook into the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the water began to glow, and a faint wailing filled the air. The ghostly ship appeared once more, but this time, it seemed different. The figures on the deck were no longer menacing. They looked relieved. The captain stepped forward, his eyes meeting ours. He gave a solemn nod before the ship slowly dissolved into the mist, the wailing fading away with it. We sailed back to shore in silence, the weight of the curse lifted from our shoulders. Life gradually returned to normal. Jack's luck improved, Emma recovered, and my nightmares ceased. The legend of the phantom ship remained, a haunting reminder of our encounter with the supernatural. But we knew we had done something few could claim. We had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. And so, whenever I look out at the sea, I remember that eerie night and the lesson it taught us. The ocean holds many secrets, and some are better left undisturbed. But if you ever find yourself face to face with the phantom ship, remember our story and know that even the darkest curses can be broken with courage and determination. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Haunting Hour. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, Don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me bring more chilling tales straight to your screen. If you're not yet part of our ghostly gathering, click subscribe and ring the bell to not miss out on any of our haunted adventures. And I'm curious, which story tonight creeped you out the most? Drop a comment below to let us know. Your favorite stories fuel our dark fires and inspire more spooky tales. Also, what kind of scary stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments. Your wish might just become our next nightmare. Until next time, keep the lights on and keep the spirits at bay. Good night, and remember, never venture alone into the dark.